Welcome back, everyone. It's time for another edition of TNT Say What? Today, we are talking about calling in and calling out. Now, you're probably aware of call outs. That is publicly giving feedback to someone about their problematic or oppressive behavior. A lot of that happening on Instagram and social media these days. Call-ins, on the other hand, are when you lovingly and gently speak to someone about problematic behavior, and you do it privately. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is partially because it is happening so prevalently right now on social media, and we're not dipping into the whole idea of cancel culture. That will be a talk we have on another day, but this is just the act of saying, hey, you posted something problematic, you said something problematic, maybe it's over a dinner table, maybe it's, what you're saying right now is problematic from my perspective, and this is the reason why I want to talk to you about it. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about calling in versus calling out is that we're talking a lot about race lately, and there's a huge onus on BIPOC to be the ones to be calmly educating the world right now and watching our tone. I get that a lot on Instagram, like, well, maybe if you were just a little nicer or a little kinder, people could listen to your message. Here's the thing. There are people that have been battling their oppression, could be poverty, could be someone who's differently abled, could be a black person, could be a woman, could be a person of color. They could be battling several things in their life on the daily. When you have an opportunity to say something, I think it is absolutely unreasonable for someone to think that you should be saying that thing with the person's feelings at the top of your priority list. On the other hand, I do think that folks that walk around with a certain amount of privilege who can actually speak to their own communities should be calling them lovingly in. If you are a white person and you have a neighbor who has expressed racist tendencies, call them in and do it privately and have that talk. Maybe you have the energy to do that. From my perspective, I don't necessarily have the energy to do that. So, T, how do you feel about it?
Well, I definitely think people who look like those people, because sometimes they expect the person who is the minority in the situation. Like you said, it could be someone, it could have to do with your physicality, it could have to do with, race. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a woman. They expect that person who's receiving it to always be the person who speaks up. And sometimes the other people in the room who look like the person who's saying the offensive thing sometimes should be the person who helps you and says something. But for me, three different things come into factor when you're going to call in or call somebody out. So for me is how egregious is the offensive thing that you either done or said. If it's really egregious, then I don't have a problem with calling you out. I mean, everybody who knows me kind of knows that anyways. I don't really have a problem with that. It depends on how big it is or how small it is. Another thing is how many times this person has done this. So for me, if it's something that's the first time somebody's done something, or you can kind of tell they didn't mean to offend, but it still offended you, I would call them in. I would take you privately, lovingly to the side and say, listen, because I think we've all done that. It doesn't mean people who are in a minority groups have never offended. I know I've said things to people that offended them, and then when they said it to me and they called me in, and I was so embarrassed, but I didn't realize what I was saying, and I immediately fixed it. I didn't argue it, I fixed it. And the last thing is, what environment did you do it in? Did you do it in a group full of people? Because if you're going to say something that's offensive in a group, then I'm going to confront it in front of the group. Or people on social media. A lot of people write things to you on social media, me on social media. I think that's fair game. If they write you on social media, you have every right to respond on social media. You don't have to take the conversation privately, or I'll have people who might say, you're just not fair, you're using your audience to attack that person. No, they came onto my social media and attacked me publicly, so I have every right to go back publicly. So to me, those are things that I take into consideration whether I'm going to call somebody in or call somebody out.
Okay, those are good things to think about. The only thing I would say to the viewers is, don't expect, if someone has been going through, let's say, microaggressions for a lifetime, and you get them on that one day where they've had their 47,000th cut from you, there may be an explosion. That explosion might happen, and you might not get an apology about the explosion, you know? T, thank you so much. I always love having these chats.